We are back at it again with another episode on TruCapacity Talks. And today we have someone by the name of Jessica Murgueytio. I'm glad that I did not botch that name. She's a registered dietitian, and we're going to go into, there's a couple other acronyms that I'm going to need you to clarify here in a minute. But I am very happy to have you here. I really appreciate you making the time, and I'm excited to dive into this cross-sectional that I think that a lot of RDs don't necessarily get into, that I'm excited to kind of hear about. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely, James. Thank you for the invite. I love it.
You're very welcome. So let's start with, I know what MS is, right? Master of
Yes.
Science. Okay. RD, registered dietitian with a TIAN, not CIAN. Now, LD is licensed dietitian.
Yes, sir.
What does that
Licensed.
mean? Because not everyone has
So,
that.
right. Normally, to be a clinical practitioner and to bill insurances, you have to actually have a state license.
Mm-hmm.
Some states require it. Maryland, where I currently practice, requires it, but I also practice in Virginia, and they don't require it. So that's just denoting that you're state licensed.
Okay. So RD is like a national exam, and then the LD
Yep.
is state.
Yes, sir. It's a
Got it.
national RD is national board, and then licensing, like I said, just varies by the state.
Okay. I'm here for that. What is CDE?
So CDE is a certified diabetes educator, and it's a credential that a lot of different professionals can get in terms of like registered dietitian. There's a lot of nurses that are CDEs, and you have to have about 5 years of direct practice with diabetes in order to sit for, and that is a national board exam. You have to recertify every 5 years.
Okay. Why do you get that?
So it is actually my niche is diabetics, all various forms. It's the one thing I remember thinking in grad school, oh, I'm never going to work with diabetics. I don't ever want to do that. And when I got into practice, it just
Mm-hmm.
became a passion area of mine. So that this credential allows you to go into a lot more pharmacy, allows you to coach a little bit more directly. You can't prescribe insulin or adjust insulin. That's completely, medical, but you're able to advise a lot more on carbohydrate pairing with insulin dosing. And now with CGMs and pumps coming on scene, it's easier for me to be able to educate patients on those results and how their insulin and medications might play into that.
CGM, is that a monitoring device?
Yeah, it's the continuous glucose monitor that you see on the back of the arms.
Okay. Like the
So,
circles, like the circulars with
yep.
the upraise. Is that like a phone app now?
Oh my God, it's everywhere. I remember going to I think it was a conference for certified diabetes educators back in 2018, and the CGMs had just come out. So continuous
Mhm.
glucose monitors, they just hit it, and they were talking about how this is going to save so many lives, specifically with type 1 diabetics. Now it's a lot more in the functional nutrition space because people are able to watch their blood sugar patterns throughout the day. I don't want to say it's causing more harm than good because I think any data is good data. It's just more. I just find that this is giving people a lot of unnecessary anxiety around nutrition that might not be needed or warranted, but it's a fantastic device.
So it sounds like the answer there is it depends. Like for people that need it, that need to monitor that close, it's beautiful, right?
Absolutely.
For people that think that they're going to biohack their way into 70 more years, they might need to chill out.
Yes, I actually saw something on Instagram today where this guy had a CGM on and with
Uh-huh.
with one of the companies that can send them out to people who are not diabetics, and was like, I ate 5 grapes and my blood sugar went up to 95. Oh, it was just awful. I'm like, that's a normal physiological response. It's not bad. I know in the keto world, we don't see any blood sugar spikes, but I really think that's contextual. So on the type 1 and especially in the type 1 space, this has
Mhm.
already saved thousands of lives because if they go hypoglycemic, there's an alarm that'll go off, wake them up, and they can correct. So countless lives have
Wow.
been saved. Yeah. And on my type 2 diabetics, it can be used as an early intervention. You know,
Mhm.
hey, you've got type 2 diabetes. We're going to put you on metformin, but we're also going to give you this tool that will allow you to see how your blood sugar is responding to what you're eating. And I mean, we can reverse people out of
Mhm.
type 2 diabetes in 3 to 6 months. So it's great. And again, even for these people who want to optimize their diet, have no diabetes, it can be a fantastic tool for them.
Mhm.
I just think, whereas my diabetics, we're seeing blood sugar spikes over 250, people, that have blood sugar spikes in the 90s or 110, and they're they get all up in arms about it. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Let's talk about this. And it just really needs to be coached. And I think a lot of the companies that are pushing them are coaching people as well. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about that.
Okay. Can we, I love that you went here. I love that you went here because I think that the biohacking space is one that is often misunderstood. And I think that there's maybe a positive impetus or a desire to be better that may be leading the macro charge, but could be interrupting and really hurting a lot of people on the micro, right? So can we go ahead and demystify and maybe unpack just layman's terms for someone that has no idea what glucose is, has no idea what type 2 and type 1 diabetes are, has no idea why a blood sugar spike would even bother anyone? Can we just a quick education, just high points from your perspective with working with clients with your background as an RD, just demystify that? Because I think a lot of people talk about it incorrectly.
Absolutely. No, I love this question. And let me be very clear that I am 100% for people optimizing their health. Living in the preventative space is a great place to be. But I think with some of the biohacking, you do make mountains out of molehills. So from a contextual standpoint, when you consume anything with carbohydrates, whether it be a good food like fresh fruit or sweet potato, brown rice, quinoa, all the way down to the not so great foods like Skittles and, really high processed cereal, your blood sugar will elevate. And that's called glucose. Blood sugar, blood glucose are synonymous. The normal response of the human body is to release insulin. And what insulin does is it goes up to the surface of your cells and it acts like a key. And when insulin binds with the cell, these doors on the surface of the cell open wide, and then glucose can travel inside. Your blood sugar comes down. That's a normal physiological response. And what happens with the progression of insulin resistance, which is the precursor to diabetes, is that we've got all the players. The blood sugar goes up, the insulin is released, but all of a sudden the insulin key doesn't really fit in that lock very well. And so the doors are very slow to open. There's also some stuff that's inside the cell that are different transporters that don't migrate up to the front of the cell to grab that glucose as strong. So that's what the basis of insulin resistance is. So blood sugar stays high for a longer period of time. Over years and years and years of that, it's very inflammatory. The body doesn't like to be exposed to these high levels of blood sugar and high levels of insulin. Because if that blood sugar is not coming down, that insulin keeps coming from the pancreas because the body's getting that signal, hey, blood sugar is still high. So, so what we're trying to do with these CGMs is show patients that when you consume these foods or when you're exercising or when you're sleeping at night, what does your blood sugar look like throughout the day? And so in a pre-diabetic or anybody who has diabetes, it's a fantastic tool, definitely one that, like I said, is going to give a lot of information. For people who aren't diabetic or just trying to learn about themselves, they can definitely use this tool to see what is causing high blood sugar. But let's just make sure that they have a baseline information going into it. Like, for instance, no one's really maybe some people would eat fruit alone. And that's definitely something I coach a lot on, is not having fruit alone. You want to pair it with something that's going to slow down the absorption. But not many of my clients are going to sit down and just have, a bowl of white rice. Normally it's going to be white rice with chicken and vegetables and more of a mixed meal. So when you see some of these advertisements that are like, look what white rice is doing to my blood sugar, it's like, well, yes, if you're going to have just this big bowl of white rice alone, that's going to be what happens. But 9.5 times out of 10 people aren't going to eat like that. So that's kind of where the contextual coaching comes in with these CGMs, is to make sure that they know prior just the concepts of balanced eating. So that was a very long explanation to the question you asked, but I hope it hit it where you wanted to.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, hey, there's a physiological response when you eat anything with carbohydrates, and we need to understand that that's normal. Okay.
Absolutely.
We don't need to villainize it, demonize it. We don't need to run around and be keto just because that happens by itself in isolation.
Correct.
What we do need to be aware of is like, hey, if your body's not processing that in a manner that is conducive to your long-term health and is leading to other things happening because it's inflammatory over a long time, we might want to look at a different way to go.
Absolutely. And the goal is not, yes, we don't want the blood sugar to spike sky high, but it's going to go up. But the big thing is if we have good insulin sensitivity, that blood sugar should drop within an hour or two. It should come all the way back down to baseline. That's how it should work. If it goes up to 175, 180, 200, and it doesn't come down for 5 hours, that's where you can go, oh, something's amiss here. Our insulin's not working with our cells. Now we need to intervene. And it doesn't necessarily mean we need to go on medication. There's other things that can help improve that insulin resistance, but that's the dysfunction. Not necessarily that the blood sugar went up, but that it really didn't drop.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So it's a regulation problem.
Correct. And it is different in every person. I've in the 15 years that I've worked directly with diabetes, every human is a little bit different. And that's where the nuances can come in. I mean, there's obviously big general concepts that apply, but everybody's different.
Okay. Question. And this is not something I sent you previously, but based on what you just said, I used to be in law enforcement. So I used to be in the sheriff's office, I guess that was 2018. But anyways, so I used to be over, like in a sheriff's office, you start inside the jail. And so you're over detainees. We had, and I'm just going to call him Mr. Jones. That's not his name, but I'm not trying to get a violation. So Mr. Jones, there would be times where he had to get his blood sugar checked, right? Twice a day. Now, realistically, he was diabetic, and so he should have been getting it more than twice a day. But because of what was happening at shift changes is when it would happen. There's multiple times when his blood sugar was so low that he was basically passing out, and so high that something similar was happening. But what's the difference, right? Diabetically, with the numbers being, with like it being super, super, super low and super, super, super high? Is there a similar physiological response? And do you treat it differently?
Very similar symptoms. Is what makes it challenging to diagnose in terms of what you are. And you see that a lot with type 1 diabetics. So if we circle back briefly to that explanation I gave you about insulin and blood sugar, the difference with that insulin resistance that's present is in type 2 diabetics, and that can develop for a lot of reasons. Type 1 diabetics, the body just doesn't make insulin at all. And the body attacks and kills the beta cells in the pancreas that produce insulin. So they have to go on exogenous insulin, meaning they have to take it with syringes or they wear a pump. So in type 1 diabetics, if they take too much insulin, their blood sugar can plummet. Wow. And that is a very critical, dangerous situation. And the first thing I coach all of my type 1s on that I get is to make sure that they are aware of hypoglycemia and how to immediately treat it. Because you can go from a not so great space to a coma within a few hours, depending on the circumstance, and die shortly after, which is why these CGMs are so incredible for the type 1 diabetic community. So the high blood sugar, things that are considered critical, 200, 250, 300, 400, it takes a longer time to get there, a few hours, really not doing well with diet, not taking medications as prescribed. And so it's still critical. And if it gets high enough, you can absolutely go into a coma and you can absolutely die. It's just the length of time to get there is much longer. And instead of hypo, but unfortunately the symptoms are very, very similar. You can get, very faint, very angry, sweaty, cold, clammy palms, irritable. There's a very, very hungry, rapid heart rate. There's a lot of symptoms. And it's terrifying. A lot of my type 1 diabetics say it feels like drowning when they're low, that they just can't get up for air. And so it's definitely something I work to prevent on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, there's one time that I thought things were going to go very, very, very awry, where the paramedic that was on site took this jelly-like substance, and I have no idea, but she was like, if you don't get out of the way, we're going to have a lot more paperwork, and there's going to be a lot more things going on because he is on the verge.
Yep.
Is that where you're talking about, like crashing so far that you have to just get hit with something now?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. There's glucose gels. The other risk you run with type 1 diabetics or type 2 diabetics, because there are type 2 diabetics on insulin, because if you allow that disease to progress enough, the pancreas will just go kaput and we'll have to go on that medication. So that if they actually can get like kind of woozy. And the last thing you want to do is say, here, have a hard candy, you know, and this guy's
Yeah.
like woozy and rolling back. So they have glucose gel that you can actually squeeze into the cheek and kind of rub in, and that'll get into their system quick. The worst case scenario, there's a glucagon pen, which is insulin's antithesis, where insulin moves everything into the cell, glucagon releases it. So like when you're working out, we need to break down that glycogen to get your blood sugar up. That's what glucagon's job does. And so there's pens that a lot of type 1s will carry that you could just put into their quad, and it'll pump out a ton of glucagon and get them up faster. That is worst case scenario, but it definitely has happened. Unfortunately, a lot more previously before this technology existed.
Yeah, this looked like an epoxy, like a 2-part epoxy thing.
It could have been just pure glucose gel.
Yeah, it was wild. I was like, you're about to do what? You're about to do what?
Yeah,
He's not responding. What do you mean? How's he going to take that? So
it's scary.
yeah, and this is like this is with zero understanding. This is me just in the sheriff's office, just living life, trying to do law enforcement, have no idea about anything diabetic, have no idea about what's going on, supposed to be caring for this person, but like I don't know it doesn't make sense that someone would be falling over and look like the
Yeah.
life is gone in him multiple times a week. Like something is not happening right here.
Oh, it's terrifying. I remember when I first moved up here, I
Mm-hmm.
actually worked at Lifetime Fitness for about 18 months. And I was back in my office, and I had two trainers run into my office and said, there's a woman who is passed out and she's diabetic, and she's on the fitness floor. And I was like, what, why aren't you guys getting her juice? And it came to, they ran and got her juice. She was okay. Luckily she had her kit with her. We were able to get her up and going. And then of course we called the paramedics to be careful. But it's important for a lot of people to know this, especially in the fitness world, because we are working with people who are trying to get their health together. And type 1 diabetics, they only make up 10% of the diabetes cases in this country, but they're still out there. And it's important. It's an important thing for people to know. If someone says I'm diabetic and I'm not feeling good and I'm in the fitness floor, they're most likely going
Mm-hmm.
low. And we just got to get them some juice or whatever you have around that's liquid and sugar.
Okay. Okay. And so transitioning from making sure that people don't fall out and not come back. I'm
Exactly.
curious on the client side, since you're not on
Mhm.
research, right? You're doing a lot of interface. Has it always been 1-to-1 or has it been 1-to-many?
So I love teaching. I've always taught. I
Mhm.
started at Florida State when I was in grad school. And so teaching is something that I love to do. But in terms of my clinical work, I started in the ICU. So it was really 1-to-1 if my client was even conscious. And then from there went straight to Lifetime. And that was
Mhm.
actually my first job where I was working directly one-on-one
Mhm.
with clients. Um, I did teach groups there. And when I transitioned to my clinical practice at Bethesda Medical Associates, where I was for 10 years prior to coming on with Rehab to Perform, I worked primarily one on one and also did diabetes group classes, which was awesome. I led some other classes on cardiovascular disease. I did one on preserving cognition. And I think that just goes back to me loving to teach, but
Mhm.
the vast majority has been one on one.
Okay. And so with that one-on-one, I understand how to kind of attack some of the psychological, right? And also some of the emotional side of just coaching in general. But I mean, it's out of scope for me to well, first of all, as a nutritionist, to do any medical intervention. Let me make that very clear for everyone listening. Out of scope for that. But I'm curious, being a CDE, right, with your extensive understanding and also love for teaching, like how do you personally handle the emotional, right, and the psychological side with your diabetes patients while they also have other lifestyle interventions going on?
I really try and one of the skills that I think I've really worked on a lot and I am consistently learning is to really listen to them. Within the world of telehealth, I've had to evolve with video conferencing, but I really like to sit down with my client and ask them, what do you want to learn? Where are you at in this? And then before we even get to talking about their diet, I ask them about their sleep, their stress, their exercise, more of their lifestyle. Who's in your house? Who do you live with? Is this something? And a lot of my diabetics will say, tell me what you know about diabetes. just to kind of feel out where they are. Because in some cases, I'll have people come sit down and say, well, I'm only here because my doctor sent me. And I'm like, well, do you want to learn anything? No, not really. Okay, well, we've got, 45 minutes to an hour together. Is there anything you want to discuss? And I used to get very like, you know, kind of frazzled by that.
Mhm.
Now it's just like, well, this is your time. What do you want to learn? So there's a lot of emotion around medical diagnoses. Um, people watch family members die from diabetes. When I worked in Atlanta for a year, I have an amputation almost every day in the hospital I worked at. And so I feel like the last thing I want to do is come in and be like, well, this is what I'm going to tell you to do. It's like I
Mhm.
let them try to like warm up so I can kind of feel out where their readiness is,
Mhm.
because I can go into carb counting and let's measure and let's use your CGM, but that overwhelms a lot of people. Sometimes I just say, okay, have you even looked at a food label? They're
Yeah.
like, no, I never have. It's like, okay, well, why don't we just start with that? I just want you to start looking at labels. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's their only task. And they come, I'll see you in 2 weeks, and they'll come back to me and say, okay, what'd you start seeing? What do you have questions about? And I find if I allow them to kind of guide me, it's much more successful than me coming in with my agenda.
Yeah, I think that there's an important balance there, right? Because you
Yes.
you want to come in, you want to make sure that you don't set someone up for failure, right? Psychologically
Hmm.
or medically, right? By just being like, hey,
Correct.
it doesn't matter, you're okay, do what you want to do. Like, that's not true.
Absolutely.
But also
Absolutely.
in even just fitness and just non-medical intervention nutrition, like
Hmm.
there's so much more than just how to count macros, how to find your TDEE, how to understand glucose, how to understand the things that are the levers. There's way
Hmm.
more to it than that. What is your relationship with your parents like? What is their relationship with food? How were you raised? Where were you raised? What did your diet look like before you got all these diagnoses? Right? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things that they go on there. So that's interesting. It sounds like you actually don't take the doctor frame. And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
I really try not to, because they've already been to their primary care, their
Mhm.
endocrinologist, and their
Mhm.
cardiovascular, not sorry, not cardiovascular surgeon, cardiologist,
Mhm.
and they've already been told, you need to lose weight. Yeah, you should exercise more. So, and they know I'm going to see the dietitian. She's going to tell me everything I can't eat, everything I have to do that I'm doing wrong. And they come in with a lot of that loaded. And so I find, like, I have my pillars, I have my strong beliefs and how I feel.
Mhm.
This is what you need to do to fix this. If someone comes in and is like, you just need to tell me, I will absolutely lay it out for them. But 8 times out of 10, that is not the attitude. They come in very defeated. They come in scared. They come in really pissed off. Someone dragged them here, and so if I just come at them, and I did that a lot early on in my
Mhm.
career. I came at them with it because you're excited, you're
Mhm.
passionate, you want to help people. And I still would not be in this profession if I didn't just love my interaction with my clients. But I can't come at them with all of that at once. I have to let You have to let people warm up to you, because trust me, whether they're seeing you as a trainer and their fitness coach or their nutritionist, they have preconceived notions of what they're about to hear. So if you come at them right with that, it's not going to work as well as if
Mhm.
you let them like warm up to you, and you ask them about who they are versus just what they're eating.
Yeah. Problem awareness, situation awareness, and awareness of who they are, not, hey, here is your prescription, here's your RX, here's what you have to do. And if you don't do it, you're gonna be here and you're not gonna do this.
Yeah,
I'm very curious on two things that you just said.
sure.
One, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions or preconceived notions that people come in when they come to see you that they have that
Hmm.
you try to break? And then secondarily, where do you think that your pillars, absolutely your box, is
Hmm.
counter to the majority of the industry?
So I'll answer both questions with the first one, and that is my staunch belief that weight training is the absolute fix for a lot of these metabolic problems. Um, I remember when I was in graduate school and I read this study, and I do not have the reference. It was back in 2008. I wish I did, but it was a big meta analysis where they looked at weight training as an intervention for diabetics. And when you took a group of people and just put them into a weight training routine 3 times a week for 45 minutes to an hour, their A1Cs dropped significantly with no dietary intervention. And I held that. And I was a marathon runner at the time. I was not doing any weight training. I was like the absolute opposite. And then I never really jumped on that. I kind of held it. And then when I moved up here, I started working at Lifetime and working around all these trainers in this fitness industry. And, that was kind of my first toe into that world. I was like, okay, well, let's just see. And around that time is when more and more information was coming out around muscle and diabetes and muscle and insulin sensitivity. And it's just only built over time. So a lot of people come into my office and say, okay, I know I need to lose weight, eat less carbs, and run. And I'm like, okay, we're going to back that up about 5 notches, and we're not going to run if you want. But every person leaves my office with a prescription of 3 to 4 days a week of weight training. And I get a ton of pushback on that. I had one woman the other day, I was trying to tell her that while yoga and Pilates are fantastic and I want people to do them, they are a wonderful segue into weight training, but I don't want her to live in that space. I would like her to eventually lift weights. And I got a really nasty email from her and said, well, I didn't think you heard me. I want to build muscle this way. And I was the one that I said, I'm sorry, that's just not what I stand in. You're perfectly entitled to continue this, but you asked for my recommendation. And that is one where I really butt heads with a lot of people. But I think that one of the biggest reasons we're seeing this uptick in metabolic issues is because we're under muscled. Dr. Gabrielle Lyons talks a ton about that. She is somebody that I follow pretty much every word she says. And she brings it to the forefront all the time of metabolic issues is that we just don't have enough muscle. So that is one of the biggest places that I get a ton of pushback. I start talking about like sleep and stress and carb counting, and people are pretty aligned. But that is the biggest point of contention. Not a lot of people want to get into the weight room and lift. But from the patients who have done that, I mean, especially my women, the proof is in it. It is unbelievable what a good solid weight training will do to not just to your body composition, but to your metabolic health.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in it fully. I had a I had a client that had PCOS that her doc, both her PCP and then her OB, were like, "Hey, you're not healthy enough to get pregnant. Like you literally can't do it." And she came in with us, and we did not fix her. Let me be very clear: we didn't fix her, but we did get her to eat a hell of a lot more protein and weight train 3 times a week. And she literally just had her baby like 2-3 days ago. She sent me a picture of the baby literally after it came out and was cleaned off. Sent me a picture next to her husband and was like, this only happened because I took a plunge and started lifting weights and got myself out of just what the MD said. And it was such a great feeling, right? Because
I got chills.
TruCapacity, James didn't do that. But by way of me showing her that there's a different way for you to change this composition to still eat some carbs and not have it wreck yourself, and manage our protein intake and lift. I mean, 6 months of lifting, 6 months of 3 times a week. And she was able to get pregnant and then had a healthy pregnancy, and baby is out and good to go so far.
And what's one of the hallmarks of PCOS? Insulin resistance. That is one of the number one diagnostic criteria for PCOS. And so a lot of women come to me on metformin and say, I've got PCOS. I say, awesome. First thing you're going to do is start lifting. And they don't like it when I say it's not the 5-pound, routine that you've been doing. I need you to squat. Like I don't need you to go in and put 250 pounds on the bar and try and deadlift, but I need you to go lift. I need you to really lift. And that's a wonderful story. I love, actually my graduate professor worked directly with PCOS. And so that was like another world that wasn't really as well defined as it is now. Back in 2007, 2009 was in grad school, but it is a wonderful population that I like to work with.
Yeah, and I've only had the pleasure of working with one individual that had PCOS, but I would say
we got a pretty good result from it.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's not understood a ton. And even I am no expert on PCOS by any stretch of the imagination, but I will tell you that when she came in, I did as much research as I can and pulled on every professional relationship that I have with anyone that's anywhere close to that space at all, RDs, MDs, etc., to be pointed in the direction of as much as I could understand so that I didn't lead her astray. And I think that it's interesting. You're one of the first RDs, my close friend, Jessica Alvarez, that's over at Emory. That's the PhD that we've talked about. Very solid and very bullish on weight training as well. But not a lot of RDs are. Not a lot of MDs are. Not a lot of orthos are. Not a lot of people that are in multiple areas are very bullish on weight training and want to communicate about how it's the thing that can get people injured and this, that, and the other. But I mean, in your clinical opinion, like, why is that?
I don't know. I was with a group of 7 physicians, prior to coming on with R2P, and they were wonderful physicians, some of the best in the area, and just absolute incredible clinicians. And it literally took 10 years of me continually saying, weight training's away, weight training is away, weight training is away. But by the end of the time I left, I had 3 of those doctors lifting weights. A few of them still didn't. I don't know if they didn't necessarily believe me, but one of the hardest things is changing opinion, especially opinion that's been reinforced for decades of medical careers. And so I tell people too, it's not an anti-cardio, it's not anti-Pilates, it's not anti-yoga. It's just, this is your foundation. All those other things should be sprinkled into what your preference and what did the guy say in class, exercise flavor, your flavor of fitness, but if you don't have a foundation of weights, you're not going to run forever. If you don't have a foundation of weights, you can really hurt yourself in yoga. You could hurt yourself in yoga even if you do have a foundation of weight. You can hurt yourself walking on the side of the street. So it's not like it's a negation for all injury prevention, but I mean, my husband's a personal trainer. I've gotten to watch his clients over the past, 13 years that we've been together. And I mean, he has 2 clients that are in their late 70s that go do architectural digs in Israel in the middle of summer. I don't know many people who are pushing 80 that can do that. And, that's the thing is, it's just, I feel like it is just irreplaceable in this society because we don't challenge our bodies any other way. So yeah, I don't dog any other form of fitness. I just say this has to be your foundation. Then from there, you can build in anything you want.
Yeah. Do you get pushback from even the RD world?
Oh yeah. I don't think any career is, is lack of opinion, though I think it's becoming less and less. The research is really there now. I mean, everything from osteoporosis management and prevention to the metabolic side of this, it's really hard to argue that muscle isn't, as Dr. Lyon says, the organ of vitality. I don't know how many people can really argue that. And I don't think there's also many people out there trying to say that you can build and maintain sufficient muscle through cardio and yoga throughout the lifespan. So they might try. I just don't know how much validity they have. And again, I always say, if that is your decision, I've given you the education. This is my opinion and my knowledge. You do with it what you will.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think that there is always a qualifier, right? Like if you choose your own adventure. So if you don't want to listen, I mean, at the end of the day, if you do want to listen, I'm not responsible for it helping you either. Like I'm going to be here to try to help you, to try to inform, but like, you got to make that decision on your own. And you take the consequences for better or worse, either way. So make a decision how you'd like to.
Amen. Oh, it's very true. And I think the medical community is catching up to it. I have heard more, it's still sporadic, but I have heard more clients say, well, my doctor did mention weight training. I never heard that 10 years ago. So I do think it's coming. I just think that it's hard for people that believe in edicts that it's hard for them to pivot the recommendations.
Yeah. And I guess I think that, the deeper entrenched you are in the methodology that you think works for you or you've seen to work in whatever cases around you, i.e. you're a surge PA for orthopedics and you think that no one should be doing weight training over, 20% of your body weight because you see people get injured all the time. okay, that informs your opinion. But it is
Yes.
interesting when you can be around people that want the same goal at the end of the day for the people that we're working
Mhm.
with, but have different means of getting there. And perhaps maybe we could just all learn from each other a little bit rather than just bashing.
Agreed. I think that like a fantastic counter to that is I don't believe as a professional that veganism is the optimal way for the human body to be. However, if somebody comes into my office as a vegan and they are diabetic,
Mhm.
the last thing I'm going to say is, well, what you're doing is wrong and I can't help you. I would never do that.
Yeah.
Well, I need to eat more protein. Okay, these are the protein sources we have, or I need to manage my carbohydrate. Okay, let me teach you carb counting and let's see if we can work this down. If someone were to come to me and say, Jessica, what is your professional opinion on veganism? I would give it to them. That being said, I've gone to vegan conferences.
Mhm.
I've listened to vegan people lecture and
Mhm.
I've taken the benefits that I can pull from that. Like, I think it is so important that people eat a vast majority of their intake from plants. Doesn't mean I'm going to tell them to go vegan, but I learned that and the benefits of that by going
Mhm.
and attending vegan conferences. So that's where it's like another place where I feel like if we just go in there with this edict and keto's the only way, vegan's the only way, you start isolating people and you prevent yourself from helping them because you're not open to going, okay, well, let me still try and do my best to help you in this moment. So that's something I've also become a lot more flexible with,
Mhm.
is just trying to, again, meet my patient where they are. Now, if they're like, well, I don't like these protein options, I need more protein. I'm like, well, I can't invent a food. This is what we have. You know, you know, you're vegan. This is what we've got. I can't
Mhm.
help you farther, but I will absolutely do as much as I can from the stance that I have, and never turn anybody away who's genuinely seeking my help.
Yeah, one of my very close friends is vegan, like has been for 5 years, like devoutly vegan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's come off just as I for a long time was very rah rah about red meat all day, every day. It's very interesting. We've kind of come to the middle on maybe not screaming from both mountaintops, but it is
Mm-hmm.
funny because when he and I talk and he's talking about what he eats, we went to the beach probably 2 weeks ago, and he and his partner cooked for us, right? And this is the guy that has the kiddo that I used to podcast with.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful food, tastes amazing. I
Yeah.
have not had a meal wreck my gut so aggressively. I've not had a day that has wrecked my gut that aggressively since back in college when I used to drink a ton. Legitimately, never happened until that day.
Yep.
Completely uncomfortable for like 8 hours.
And the same would be true if you sat a vegan down at a table and you gave them a ribeye that was cooked in coconut oil and ghee. They would not leave the bathroom. And
Yeah.
our systems are really attuned to what we give it
Mhm.
every day. And so the funny thing is the people that scream the loudest are on the fringe.
Mhm.
The vast majority of even scientific research is right in the middle.
Mhm.
Eat a ton of plants, good quality, high quality protein, high fiber starches, and less of everything else. Not none of anything else. Not this is going to kill you, but just I've never seen a study that said red meat is going to kill you if 80% of your diet and the rest of the plate is plants. That study doesn't exist because it's not done because
Yeah.
it wouldn't happen. So I have, I that's why I tell people, yes, I eat red meat. I fully believe red
Mhm.
meat is a superfood. Um, I just got some really cool red meat with ground liver and heart in it because it's got a ton of rich minerals. I think it's fantastic for women and men for that matter. But I had it with, a big pile of salad
Mhm.
with avocado and beets and carrots, and then an apple on the side. It's a balance. It
Yeah.
really is. And again, there are people that thrive on a vegan diet, and I'm happy for them. And there are people that thrive on a carnivore diet. I'm happy for them. It will not be how I coach. It will not be what I believe, but I'm also not going to waste my energy trying to change that at all. Not worth it at all.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get caught up in, the in group out group of what works for me has to work for everyone else. Like that's just
Yes.
not the case. I mean, for a long time, all I ate was meat and fruit, legitimately.
Mm,
Like a pound of meat at a time, red meat at maximum 90/10, right?
okay.
And then about a pound of fruit. And I would eat twice a day. and
Oof.
I was regular, but not out of bounds. And I got more protein than I think I've ever gotten in my life with that, plus a little bit of supplementation of some whey isolate, right? Just a little with lactase in it. And it was solid. I had a lot of energy and I shedded a lot of body fat doing that.
Yeah.
However, it's not a way that I saw feasible for me to eat forever.
Right. And again, everybody's allowed to kind of run their body as we want. I think that's the best thing is we all have autonomy over
Mm-hmm.
our bodies. I don't know. I think we are omnivores. I think we
Mm-hmm.
need vegetables. I think we need fruit. I definitely think we need protein. I think that is the most essential nutrient because it's funny. It's an extreme example, but I remember watching. Do you ever see the show Naked and Afraid on
Yes.
Discovery? Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, there was somebody who went on there that didn't eat any meat or fish.
Oh,
They
wow.
lasted about 6, 7 days and they tapped. And
Mm.
it's because if you strip away all of modern food manufacturing, it would be impossible to survive on a vegan diet. If you were just out in the wilderness, you would have to eat animal to survive. And it just shows that like we really do need, I mean, protein is just absolutely critical. And so it is definitely my number one nutrient. That is typically also something I educate a lot of my diabetics on about, again, how critical muscle is to the management and the prevention of the progression of their disease. So that is something else they don't think they're going to hear is me coming in and saying, I think you need about 25 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And instead of hitting them first, unless there's a massive glaring issue with their carbohydrate portion, I try and start them with what we need to add to their diet and let the good kind of crowd out the bad because they know they're going to hear, we got to reduce your carb portions. They know that. They might not want to, but they know that's what they're going to hear. So if I also say, well, yeah, we're going to work on this, but I also want you to have half of your plate vegetables, and there needs to be at least 3 to 4 ounces or more, sometimes for men, of course, and especially if they're working out, definitely more of protein at every meal. And all of a sudden, instead of hyper fixating on the carbs, they're more focused on getting protein, getting in adequate vegetables, and then it's easy to go, oh, we're going to shrink your carbs. They've already got 75% of their plate full. It's easier to reduce once you've got a good full plate of other things, and it actually helps a lot with blood sugar control anyway, because you're adding in fiber and fat and protein, which slow down the rate that the body absorbs carbohydrates. So you're actually controlling that postprandial rise and fall in blood sugar without even having to hyperfixate on carbs right out of the gate.
Which is the exact reason I don't eat fat going into the gym. The
Yes,
exact
absolutely.
reason. That is it right there. The
Absolutely.
exact reason I don't put fat on top of carbs and protein before I go to the gym. It'll
Nope.
slow that shit right down.
Yep. Everybody asks, should I drink should I have peanut butter in my smoothie? And I'm like, not post workout, not pre workout. You want just carbs and protein. You need to get it in, let it hit, and then you could do your fats later.
Yeah, stop that. The amount of people that preach, oh man, you just need to, just go ahead and get your protein source peanuts. I don't know about you, Jess, but to me, and Jess or Jessica, doesn't matter.
Oh, I don't care. Yeah, either one.
Wonderful. Love that. I don't know about you, but for me, I've never thought that peanuts were a solid source of protein when you look at all of the other options, vegan or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I have plenty of carnivores that tell me that they get protein from peanut butter, and I'm like, well, first off, it's not complete. So we are lacking essential amino acids, and the only way you can be complete is to have all 20 represented in a high enough quality that the body can utilize. But not only that, when you take 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, you're getting about 6 grams of protein, but you're getting about 16 grams of fat. So you can't really classify something by what it's lower in. You have to classify it by what it's highest in. Same thing with, saying that there's sufficient protein in broccoli. It's like, there's just not. And that's not even touching on the biological value of the protein itself. That's a whole nother discussion. But no, I don't let my clients count nuts as a protein source unless they're vegan, because that's what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
And they still can't count it as a complete protein, because I educate my vegans a lot on that, is to make sure that they're getting complete proteins at every meal, if they can. And then I don't ever let of my clients count hard cheese. and only a few soft cheeses as proteins, like burrata or cottage cheese. But
Man.
cheddar is a fat. Cheddar is not a protein. Wish it was, but definitely not.
Well, I love to see someone is out here doing the right work, because the amount of people that are like, well, but my string cheese says, well, but my peanut butter cup says, well, but this, I'm
Oh,
like, oh, Lord have mercy. There is no way that I'm going to let you count dark chocolate as a protein source. There is no way that I'm going to say your string cheese is going to get you to your protein goal. You're missing the point.
and when I tell them, for most women who are trying to add muscle, you need to hit around 30 grams of protein at a meal. And a lot of these women are also conscious of overall calorie intake because they're not trying to gain weight on
Mhm.
top of the weight they're going to gain by gaining muscle. And I say, okay, well, let's take the cheese stick example. And if we're going to, use it as a protein source at your meal, and we know we need to get about 30 grams of protein, how many cheese sticks are you going to need to eat to hit that value versus 4 ounces of chicken? And then you look at the
Or,
calories. Yeah, you look at the calories, you look at the fat, you look at the saturated fat. And that's another thing that I focus on a lot is saturated fat and keeping it moderated because heart disease is still the number one killer in this country. And so it's all about balancing that. If you want your saturated fat from red meat, awesome. Let's cut back on your cheese. If you want it from cheese, let's balance that. Let's see if we can get you leaner cuts of meat, and obviously tons of fiber. But and you just kind of lay it out like that and say, okay, you need X amount of tablespoons of peanut butter to get even close to that threshold. Do you really want to eat that amount of calories to get to that protein? Where it's much more efficient to do fish or eggs or chicken or bread meat or turkey. There's so many other options.
do you recommend pretty consistently people do anything to do with egg whites or egg beaters at all?
I use egg whites a lot, mainly because again, it's a balancing act. I have a lot of adults. I don't want their saturated fat to just keep climbing. So I do, yeah, I always tell them egg yolk is a superfood. The yolk itself is where a lot of choline and nutrition really lives. But if you don't want to eat 5 eggs, but you still want to get your protein, we can do 1 or 2 eggs and then add extra egg whites, get that up,
Mm-hmm.
and then, it's a good balance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious because I know me, like when I want to just tack on just a little bit more protein, right? But without all the
Yeah,
fat, without the
absolutely.
fat, I'm like, here, we're just gonna pour some more egg whites in this. We're just gonna keep it
Yeah.
rocking.
I mean, I've had people do egg whites into ground turkey and they make that
Yeah,
into like a big scramble with vegetables. And so, no, actually, I'm a big believer in eggs. I think eggs are wonderful.
yeah. No, I think so too. I think that we can get a little bit outside of bounds, but just not understanding what the macro breakdown is of foods, though. And I think that that's probably where you come in and kind of bonk people on the head with a smile and some love sometimes. Like, hold on, that's not what that is. And I want you to know
Yes.
this, not because I want to be right, but because I want you to be able to be empowered to make decisions without me.
Yes. And that's kind of part of the culture with all of this information at people online and all of these opinions and the minute you search something nutrition related, now the algorithm knows that we got to push forward all of the nutrition propaganda. And you've got doctors, you've got credentialed people
Mhm.
out there pushing misinformation, and whether or not that's their opinion, it still doesn't mean it's correct.
Mm.
And so I have to combat a lot of that. And if their favorite influencer believes something different than me, all of a sudden I've lost credibility. And that's something that I fight. I've been fighting a lot more in the latter part, in this,
Mhm.
past few years than ever before. But again, I just say, bring it. Like, I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to present you my opinion. I'll show you where it's grounded in. And then, and I say, why don't you go ask them? You made this recommendation. Why did you make this recommendation? Message your influencer. They may or may not answer, but a lot of times people can't really back up what they say um, with experience or with actual science. And that's the thing with science too,
Yeah.
right? You can cherry pick data very easily.
And even someone like and I don't have a problem with Paul Saladino, Carnivore
Mm-hmm.
MD, but I do have a problem with how much he cherry picks data. Same with Dr.
Yes.
IDZ, same with Food Babe, same with Sean Baker, same with literally like take anyone's name and put anyone else's in. Just because you know how to read a scientific study and you know how to
Yes.
confuse people that don't know how to read a scientific study doesn't mean that that's evidence for truth that what you're saying is accurate.
Absolutely. And to go back to the point that you made at the very beginning, and the fact that I think with nutrition, we make mountains out of molehills,
Mhm.
and we get so nuanced that I back a lot of people up and I go, okay, wait. Are you sleeping 7 to 8 hours? Are you moving your body every day? Are you getting enough vegetables and enough protein? You know, are you managing your stress, which is a massive influence on, blood sugar regulation and a lot of things. We get so lost in this micromanagement that, like, I have a woman who literally will have a beet and like six Brazil nuts every day because she has to get her selenium, but she just had to increase her glimepiride up to 4 milligrams a day because she's not carb counting. But she knows, she reads, but I've got my Brazil nuts. It's like, oh my God, we're getting so nuanced that we're forgetting concepts. And when I give people conceptual goals, they're like, well, this isn't specific enough. It's like, well, if we just execute sometimes general concepts, the results are going to be there. Now, you can get nuanced from there, but if you can't just do the basics, you should not be diving deeper.
Yeah, that comes down in my mind similar to how people are like, "Yo, I'm gonna slap on all this supplementation on top of
Yes.
what I'm doing. Hey,
Yes.
I'm not gonna stop drinking 5 nights a week. I'm
Mm.
gonna continue to drink a known carcinogenic compound. I'm gonna continue to do this every night of the week because it's fun and I like it with my friends. But I'm gonna watch out for artificial sweeteners. I'm gonna watch out for erythritol, aspartame. I'm gonna watch out for Splenda. And you know what? Anything that says natural flavors." Middle finger. I can't do it. Carnivore MD said
Hmm.
no. Dr. IDZ said no. Like these people, Food Babe said I'm going to die, but I'm still going to drink my martinis.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
we can't be serious.
And I think alcohol is going to be the next smoking. I really do. And I will say, I feel like with the generation below me, that the sober movement is a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more pronounced with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think everybody needs to be sober all the time forever and ever, but I really, you're absolutely right. It's getting people to cut back on alcohol is another thing that I get unbelievable amounts of pushback on. Um, it is a non-discussion with some of my patients, even if their triglycerides is how the body stores fat. It's one of the markers of cardiovascular health that I look at often, and one of the biggest things that affects it is alcohol. And I've got people who will go on 3 medications to try and control their triglycerides, but they won't stop drinking. And I'm not even trying to call them an alcoholic or anything like that, but it's unbelievable how specific people will get into supplementation and all of these different things when they've got this other glaring thing that they're not addressing that is most likely the cause of 70 to 90% of their issues.
Yeah, they'll demonize the protein powder or
Yes.
the they'll demonize a sparkling ice that has a little dye in it, right? Has a little
Hmm.
dye that has negligible calories, right? And the quantities that you would
Hmm.
actually consume it in. They'll demonize that, but then you go drink a margarita with puree in it,
Yep.
but you just don't see it made. So you have no idea what it actually is.
Right.
Fascinating to me. And I think the qualifier there with not calling people alcoholics, I think is a solid one because it's not about, in my mind, a pseudo moralistic stance on alcohol or
Right.
anything. Just we've known that it's a carcinogen and we all continue to consume it. Just macro we. I don't know if you drank or what have
Yeah.
you, but we continue to consume it at various degrees, and no one wants to really take responsibility for it. And so I think that I there's not much I can do, right? If you want to
Hmm.
hyperfixate on grass-fed, grass-finished beef, but you're drinking 4 bottles of
Yeah.
whiskey a week. I mean,
Yeah.
you can put some dog crap in some brownies and you can cook it and you can eat the brownies and you might not taste it, but it's still there.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a moral stand. I mean, I went to Florida State University for 6 years.
I went
I
to
had my fair
UGA,
share.
so
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Go Bulldogs. I'll pull for you guys when you play Florida easily. No, I mean, it's like I had my fair share of drinking. I find that the the biggest thing I've seen with alcohol lately is its relationship to breast cancer. And it
Mm,
is an extremely, extremely big risk factor. And
mm,
I just wish that made front page news. Every influencer out there should say that versus, telling people that, you know, I don't know, just all of the stuff that's nuanced and spread out there. That's a little bit much. But I wish we would become united on some of the things that would really push. I wish that was the thing, that we would just become united in respect for everybody's opinion, and also kind of say, like, let's just get some core concepts. Let's push these forward to really change the health trajectory of this country. Because if you could do that and just say, regardless of stance, everybody needs to eat more vegetables. Regardless of stance, everybody needs to work out more. I mean, could you imagine the movement if we got some of these big names out there to just unite under one banner for something that most of us universally agree with, and just spend time promoting and changing that? I think we would make it, we could make a really big impact. But we get so caught up on what we don't like about each other and what we think the other people are wrong with, that we forget that we're all fighting the same battle. And I get lost in that a lot. And when I back myself up and go, remember, everybody out here is trying to make a positive impact on people's health, that's what gives me pause and goes, okay, instead of fighting here and disagreeing here and, you know, being all this negative, why don't we just all kind of unite and just say, why don't we just try and make this country better? Because unfortunately, for as much as we preach, we're not making much of an impact. And that's what's sad. I know I've seen amazing progress with my clients. I'm sure you have too. The story you shared was awesome. And I love hearing these success stories. But as a whole, as a nation, we've got a lot more work to do. So I wish that we could move forward together. I don't think that will happen, but that's why I'm much more open to, again, always trying to meet people and clients where they are and find what do we have in common that can improve people's health than how much we have different.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And I want to respect your time here. So I just have really kind of one little deep dive that I think you and I might have some interesting opinions on. And that's the rise of elective use of dulaglutide, semaglutide, also known oftentimes as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, etc.
Oh, yes.
From your perspective,
yes,
where do you think we're going? Are we improperly utilizing? Why is there such a craze? What do you think about these compounds?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I definitely have time to answer it. I'm definitely not in a rush. I had to really slow down a few months ago and really think about this, because on one hand, I want people to succeed. That is my biggest thing. I really do want my clients to succeed. I want them to lose weight. I want them to be healthier. And I really want them to change over the course of a lifetime. I have a lot of concerns about Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro. I was very familiar with, them in the use of diabetics. Let's just start in that category. GLP-1s have amazing impact on blood sugar control because of how they slow down gut motility. They allow carbohydrates to be absorbed over a longer period of time. They allow insulin to be active over an extended period of time. So the results with blood sugar control are absolutely there. And we do not need high doses to accomplish that goal. In terms of giving it for weight loss, especially when, the way Hollywood is using it, I want to lose 10 pounds. So I'm going to take an injectable medication at an insanely high dose that will absolutely zap my appetite and have a whole other host of wicked side effects. I'm vehemently against. If I have somebody who is morbidly obese, difficulty with exercise, diabetic, I'm okay with adding that as an adjunct to their therapy to see if we can get things going. I don't know if I would ever firsthand recommend it, but if they come to me with a physician prescription for it, I'm not gonna be like, oh, you're on that horrible drug, you should get off of it right now. I don't know if I don't feel like that's a stance I need to take up right now. What I can do is tell them that the risks are high for them to regain a lot of the weight loss after they stop it. I also absolutely insist that they weight train 4 days a week, because one of the things that we're seeing is this really makes you hemorrhage lean muscle very quickly. And so while you're losing weight, and you will obviously lose some muscle in any type of weight loss goal, but we're not talking about a little bit. I mean, you are really losing a ton of muscle on this medication. And on the top of that, you're exacerbating it by barely eating. And if someone is barely eating and losing weight, I guarantee you the thing that they're not going towards is salmon. When I worked with people on this medication, as I do every day, a lot of them have severe reflux, severe nausea. That's not going to lean you into protein. So I have my extreme reservations about this drug. If someone came to me and said, "Do you recommend going on it?" No, I would not. If someone comes to me on it, I'm not going to refuse them care. But I've had 5 patients stop. They've all regained the weight that they lost. I have some people that will stop taking it while they go on vacation so they can eat what they want and then go back on it when they get home from vacation. So it's already being abused. These celebrities that are going on it to lose 10 pounds aggravate me to no freaking end, because it just makes me so angry. And I wish my biggest wish is that before prescribing, physicians would say, this is an injection that you need to be comfortable taking for the rest of your life. And no, we don't have long-term data on this medication at these high doses for decades. We don't. You need to be weight training 4 days a week before I prescribe you this medication. And you need to see a dietitian on top of going on this med. I wish that would be the prescription. It won't be. But that is my opinion on these medications.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and also very, for me, it makes me smile that you have that response to it, because I don't believe that you're anti-medicine. I don't believe that you're anti-pharmacological intervention when necessary, or you wouldn't be in diabetes work. Like
Correct.
If you were adamantly against intervention, you wouldn't be working with diabetes patients. But the problem that I have is the misuse electively, very similar to what you're saying, without being honest with people about what's going to actually happen. Because if you decide that you want to smack yourself with TRT every week at high doses, that's your choice. If you also want to take a ridiculous amount of Ozempic and you know all of the risk that could happen, well, then that's your choice. What I think is not cool, and something that I have firsthand experience with from calling and I'm not going to use their name, but there's a clinic that's right up the street that I called as a prospect to see what their requirements were to get on there and just pretend like my mom needed it. And they legitimately told me that all that you have to do is walk in. And if you want to take HCG, plus you want to take semaglutide, I don't know how to say it, whatever.
That's fine, it doesn't matter.
If you want to take the two, right, it's like somewhere around $900 a month, right, to take them both. If you want to take HCG by itself, it's like 5 something. If you want to take Ozempic by itself, it's like 280-ish. And you can either, like, depending on dosage, you're talking about either every 7 or daily, right? Depending on how high dosage and what you're taking, because, just as well, actually way more than I do, that you can't just be hitting yourself every 7 days with the dosage that will put you out. Like you have to go more frequently. It's more syringes, it's more intervention, and it's way more than you think is going to happen by utilizing these.
And what's your long-term goal? I've had 3 clients say, I'm just going to do this to kickstart my weight loss. And I tell them, this isn't a kickstart. The minute you come off of this, you will gain this back. And I've seen so many people come to me after decades on phentermine, or not decades, they could only take it for so long, and it just crushes their metabolism. And we're trying to fix that still. And now this new medication comes out that is nothing different. It is not a long-term strategy. And I am the last person that's anti-medicine. I am all for, I think people like medicine when it's convenient for them to like it, and they hate it when it's popular to hate it. And I'm like, if we forget the medical industry does a lot of amazing things. We're almost curing some cancers. There's incredible things out there with medicine. So I don't hate the industry at all. Using pharmaceuticals as a shortcut to health is never going to work. It's just not. It will not add muscle. It will not extend a health span. If anything, it's making health span worse, because you're walking around nauseous with reflux and diarrhea all day long. And you're not improving your diet because you can't eat. And if you do eat, you're not eating a salad with salmon. because you can't keep it down. So this is in no way, shape, or form improving behavior or thought process around food or thought process around health. It is a glorified shortcut. That is not even a shortcut because you have to be on it forever.
But
So
what physician is going to tell anyone that, though? There's no incentive to tell someone that as a physician, period. And who's going to check them? There's no long-term data. Who's going to check them? Are you gonna raise your baton and go after a medical practice? Good luck.
and it's not going to get you anywhere. And
Nope.
so,
Just gonna get you a
and
lawsuit.
exactly. And that's why when and of course my opinion doesn't hold to most
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just a dietitian or I'm a dietitian. There's so many
Don't you love that
preconceived
word?
notions. Oh
Just.
God. Oh, all the time. You're just a dietitian, or well, my doctor said it was safe. And it's like, well, doctors also, and again, I don't hate physicians, but doctors thought opioids were safe.
And look where
We
we're at now.
have, and look where we're at. There's so many things that it's like a ready, fire, aim. We saw that this medication was causing weight loss when Victoza came out over a decade ago at a much, much lower dose. So now let's just slap on a lot more and call it a weight loss drug. And where I really got aggravated is they just cleared it for kids 12 years old and up. I have such an issue with that, not just as a dietitian, but as a parent. So I won't even get on that soapbox, but no, I would say buyer beware. You will never shortcut your way to health. If you truly want a lifestyle, then work on your lifestyle. If that's not working, let's get a better coach. Let's get a psychologist. Let's get a trainer. I have never seen anybody, never in my 15 years as a dietitian, I have never ever seen anybody track their macros for 30 days and work out and not see weight loss. Not one person. 9 times out of 10, when people say, I tried that, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. If you did, then your macros and your calories were wrong and your trainer was awful. I just haven't seen it. And so, yeah, that when everyone's like, this is my last chance. Well, then we didn't try hard enough. But people hate
Yeah.
hearing that. They don't like
Well,
hearing that at
absolutely.
all.
Do
So,
work. Listen to you with credentials. Have to change
yeah.
my emotion and my psychology around stuff. I can't just eat whatever I want like I'm 12.
I mean,
What do you mean?
I only have 900 followers, James. Who am I? I'm not anybody.
Stop. You're far more than you even think. Don't play with me.
No, I'm very proud of the career I've built, and I'm honored by the trust that my patients give me. And as challenging as it gets to be,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I know I'm a dietitian for life. I don't
Yeah.
know if it'll always be in this capacity, but I am. And I'm very, very humbled by the trust that I get from my clients every day. And I appreciate all this time to talk. I don't ever really get this option. And so I appreciate this format a lot.
Absolutely. Well, you just let me know when you want to come back. I think there was so many things that we didn't go into, but I couldn't leave us. I could not leave us a first interaction here for the people without talking about Ozempic.
I'm
Could
so glad you
not,
brought that up.
could not,
So
could
glad.
not, because I actually caught a lot of flack in Atlanta for speaking out against it, and telling my clients that no, don't do that, because there's a big spa with a medical director that's a cardiovascular surgeon, right? That is that is a medical director at this spa that is
Mm,
writing these scripts, and we just really don't see eye to eye at all, like in the
mm.
slightest, because that is absolutely a cash grab, my dude. Absolutely a cash grab.
Ugh, it's just it. Don't worry. We will remember this discussion on what is it, June 23rd of 2023. And, unfortunately, I have a feeling that in about 2 years, we're going to have to circle back to this. And it's just not going to be, it's every day I see an article coming out on the side effects of this medication. So maybe it won't even take 2 years, but I don't know. It'll come full circle. We just gotta be patient. And in the interim, keep continuing to help our clients to the best capacity we can.
Absolutely. I think that's really all we can do. Before we let you go and we stop the recording here, where can the people find you? How can they get more of you and what you do, your community, the people you help, the things that you care about? Where can they find you?
Well, I work for a fantastic physical therapy practice called Rehab to Perform. We have 8 locations over Maryland and Virginia. So all of my information is on our website at rehabtoperform.com/nutrition. On social media, I try to be as active as I can on Instagram, and it's at J underscore my last name underscore RD. And I'm sure I can get that one to you. Those are the best places.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely link that. Do you
Thank
do you
you.
have anything going on YouTube or on Facebook where people
So
can
we
find you?
have a yeah, we have a fantastic YouTube page with Rehab to Perform, and then I have a Facebook page that I just started called Nutrition for Optimal Aging. And I post a lot in there. We have an upcoming class that we just launched. It will go live July 11th on that Tuesday. If anybody's interested, I'd
Heck yeah.
love to have you enroll. So, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Heck yeah. Well, we'll link all that in the bio below. And I'll coordinate with you and we'll get the sign up or wherever the landing page is to get in that course. And we'll rock and roll from there. I appreciate you coming on and giving us your time. And I think everyone listening to this will also appreciate it. And if you'll hold on just 1 second, I'm gonna stop the recording. We'll go from there.
Sure.
Appreciate y'all being out here. Thank you for your attention, and we will see you next time.